Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming and attending that session. So we're going to be talking about from textbook to pedagogical practices in digital world. So if you don't understand me, it might be my accent, or don't know what I'm speaking about. So I would say it's about my accent. So let's start. A few words about JOUVE. I won't talk about JOUVE. We are on booth S505 down this row, but we're a French-based company, worldwide location with 3,000 people. And we are addressing the publishing industry in different fields, such as education, obviously, as well as trade and professional education, and corporate and institution. But again, down the road, you will be able to come to visit us at our booth. So let's talk more about what the topic is today. So before we start, as a global introduction, for the past few years, we keep saying that publishers with digital are moving from book-centric to content-centric. Actually, now that from where we are with digital, we are moving from a content-centric organization to a content out of context kind of organization, meaning that you need to get your content, and put it out of context so you can create a proper digital product at the end. And what we'll be seeing today is how the pedagogical pathway will be created from your content. So as a start, we will start looking at you might all know that value chain, which is the education value chain in the world. And you will see on the top part of that graph how to create the print product. And on the bottom part is how you can create the print and digital product at the same time. And what we'll be seeing towards that presentation is that digital first will become more crucial. So at first, when you start creating your content in digital education world, as well as in print, you start working on the project definition. And what are the main differences between print and digital? It's basically when you're creating a book, a paper book, you're working from a linear way, a linear perspective. You start getting your content created and you think through the entire book from beginning down to the end. Whereas in digital book, you will start thinking differently. It's how can I use the same content, put it in perspective? How can I navigate within my content? And more importantly, my content can be created with different end products. It's not only a print book. A digital book is not only an EPUB, but it could also be an application. It could also be assembly the content. And this is what we're going to start covering. But then when you have creating your project, you will then need to work on creating the content itself. And for that, on the print world, you will have an author or different authors working in different fields to create your book. In the digital space, you might have an author for the content, written content, but use different type of people to work on the digital content, the sounds, the videos, the quizzes, the interactive exercises. So you will need to manage different type of people to create your own content. And once you have those persons to create the content, on the print side, you will then create the drawing. You will need to create the text itself. In the digital world, you will need to create those digital content in different various formats. So then you can start creating your data preparation. And this now comes, I wouldn't say the most important, but a quite crucial point into creating your content. It's clearly about composition and assembling. When we are talking about books, paper books, we're talking about typesetting, composition, using InDesign. When we start moving into the digital world, you might be talking about assembling content. I have content I need to assemble. From text, from multimedia, from quizzes, and within the content, how do I then put it in context, and how do I navigate within that content? Digital books gives you additional perspective on the content itself. And from that content, once it will be assembled, you will then start commercializing it and create your own product. So obviously for print, your product is quite simple. It's a print book. You send it to print. But then your strategy is more cost reduction centric. Is how do I print as close as to my final customer? How do I print less to have less stock? How do I print cheaper, obviously? In the digital world, I will have to think, okay, I've got my content. What product do I want to create? Which customers do I want to target? And depending on the customers you want to target, you might create different type of products. A proper flip book, a proper assessment center, a digital enhance with interaction books. And this becoming more crucial. And that product creation is now being this, how do you say that? You're actually splitting the content creation to the product creation. On one side, you will start creating your content, and on the other side, you will create product that will use your content. Whereas in the print world, when you create the content, you already know it's for the print. You might have different version, but still, you can manage it much more linear way. And then indeed comes the marketing and merchandising. So it's how do I start making my content available somewhere, and how do I make sure people know I have my content available. And then you will be more open to a new marketing, merchandising aspects with social networks and so forth. And finally, the distribution. So I went quite fast, although we could stay long hours on that slide because there are so many aspects in terms of comparison on print and digital. But what we can start seeing also now is that depending on where you are, you might work differently when you're in the US, when you're in Europe. And even though in Europe, in France, in UK, in Germany, digital education is not quite the same as in the US. So we will look at now US versus Europe. So don't ask me if UK is part of Europe. I will leave you with that answer yourself. But that's for the answer. So here what we're seeing is basically all the main aspects of the value chain on how we can compare on how well has been developed depending on the US versus Europe. The key point here is clearly that US is already well advanced in terms of creation of digital content ahead. So you can then start creating and work on the mashup of the content. Whereas in Europe, we are still pretty much print focused, and then we create the digital product from the print. So that will drive will drive how you organize within the publishing house to create the content and then to assemble that content. And we'll see that a creation and reuse of a content will become key. So once we say that, it's, well, the usual suspect as we say, what are your challenges? Well, except coming here today, the other challenges you're facing on a daily basis, basically, and you will be facing with digital as it raises, it's clearly how do I then start first adapting to the fast pace of digital changes. 2 years ago, we're talking about EPUB. Today, we're talking EPUB 3. We're talking about creating your own application. We are talking about using on-the-shelf platform to distribute content. You are creating your own digital textbook application, like for instance, Wiley has Wiley Plus in the US, Engage, MindTab, and so forth. In Europe also, publishers are now looking at what type of product they can create. And then with a digital, as digital evolve, today we're talking HTML5 is not Flash anymore. In 2 years down the road, what will be HTML5, HTML6 or another one? So at the end of the day, it's how do I then start working on my content without creating a legacy that I won't be able to use in the future. So agility, it's becoming critical. And for that, you need to also rationalize your production process to make it happen in order to then separate clearly the content creation, content management to the product definition and distribution. I'm moving very fast, faster than I thought. So we can focus a bit more on this one then. This slide, it's basically where we should be going down the road in terms of value chain within the digital space. What we start seeing in terms of content creation, content management, distribution is what we were seeing. I was talking earlier on that in terms of creating the content, we need to separate it to the product definition. That actually means that down the road, you will be able to create content without putting it in any context, and then work on the product creation, the final digital product. So on the content creation, if we speak more practically, It's basically how do I create my animation, my sounds, my videos, and obviously something I've forgotten here, my text. You still need text, obviously. But the key point is, as I was saying, today we're talking about having digital legacy already, although digital is quite recent. But you already have all some flash animation or other format of animation you still want to use, except that flash is not as compatible to anymore to many platforms. So then how do I convert those flash animation to HTML5 format? But also, how do I start creating more massively HTML5 quizzes, animations, so I can use them in the near future? I won't say you can come and see us and we can explain more deeply, but I will, so I did. S505 for that. But stop the commercializing of the offer. So the key point will clearly how to become that and to create it internally. Once you will have your content created, you will then to manage it, and for that you basically as simple as that. Oh, first also the right management, a key point I forget to mention. Content is created today. You have images, you have text on which you need to have the right for print and digital distribution. As the number of formats, as the number of multimedia components will increase, we also need to manage the right on those assets. So it's very important to keep that in mind, is how do I manage upfront the right for distribution, digital distribution, so it's domestic as well as international, because digital will help you become more international rapidly. So it's very important to keep in mind the right management, and for that there are experts for it, and I will then say JOUVE is one of them. I did. Content management then is becoming critical. It's I create my content outside of any context of use. I manage it, I handle it into a database, to make it simple, a content management system. And from that content management system, I will then be able to create my final products I will decide to do. And this is where we will call the composing or the assembling of the content. And for that, the key point in here, you have many offers today to create digital books. Either it's a flip book, it's multi-interactive books, it's using iAuthor, it's using other platforms. What you have to keep in mind is whichever solution you will use, you have to think that your content must be on open standards. You have to make sure that whatever solution you will use is not a closed environment that will link you for years with a very high exit fee, basically, if you want to walk out. We were talking about legacy, so creating legacy content on open format is key, but choosing a platform or solution to assemble my content based on standard is also key, if you don't want to then be attached to a solution, to a proprietary format that will cost you a lot to exit in the near future, because as we were saying, digital format are evolving very fast. And today, one format might be very good. In 2 years down the road, it might not be anymore. So paying attention to the right partner, or how do I then assemble my content internally, will become key. And obviously, InDesign is, as of today, one of the most used platforms to assemble for print and digital products. Today, for instance, we are for some European publishers as well in the US using InDesign, creating the books for print, but we are also exporting directly the digital output. I'm not talking only about EPUB, I'm also talking about some other formats for some other platforms. So finding the right partner that can use on-the-shelf solutions to create your print and digital format simultaneously, that will also become a key point. How do I create my print and digital format simultaneously will become critical for the future down the road. So you pay only once to have print and digital, whereas today you tend to pay once for the print and then an additional one for digital. So think of the way of paying once for print and incremental cost for the digital version will also be a key type of final product in the digital world. The first one is print. So why print is becoming a digital format? Shall we say print on demand, POD, is digital? It is to some extent. It has the word digital at least in it. But print is becoming an additional digital output of your platform, as well as the open standards, EPUB 3 for instance. So you will choose to create directly the EPUB format of your content. But you will also probably choose to create your own platform or digital book to sell your content directly. So you can go through the traditional path of distributing content digital way, using those Apple Store, Amazon, Kobo and so forth. But you might also want to be independent to those industrial approach or making your own application and distribution channel of your content, so you can better manage the sales and as well the marketing of those books. And this will be maybe going directly to schools, universities, and work in conjunction with people of creating white interactive blackboards or creating your own application for tablets, and as well as PC for teacher to use or for student to use also. And that comes to indeed the product distribution itself, where in terms of product distribution, as we were stated, you can go through the main players, or you can go through directly your end customers. I'm using or, whereas we should be using or and. Because obviously your content, you will create it and you will want it distributed using the open standards such as EPUB 3, as well as distributed directly to your end final customers in a digital way. So having said that, what is the link now with the education pathway? So what we start seeing here is that you have your content created outside any context of final product or sales, and then you will create your own product or use existing ones to push the content in a contextual way to the final user. But having said that, you will then, what is about education? It's about teaching. But when you start teaching, the key point is how to make sure what you give as lectures are well taught, as well as the students are learning well with your content. So for that, you might want to start having some assessment center to help students to learn using your content within your application, as well as assessing their knowledge. And the key point being that those assessment centers will still rely on the same content you will have created upfront using the content creation platform. So again, you have to very separate the usage of your content now to the creation of the content itself. And those assessment centers will become critical because that will help creating a link also with the final user. And they will be able to create additional sales on the top. So as a conclusion, because it's very much theoretical, so I thought I'll show you a real case of a business case of what we did with a French publisher. So this is a French case. I was thinking of using either a US or more UK centric, but I was thinking, you know pretty much about what's happening in the US and UK in terms of digital. So I thought let's show you about where the cheese country comes from, and the digital version of a digital textbook. So this is a French education publisher. His challenge was clearly to create an interactive textbook that teachers could use in class. And that was actually the facsimile, or we could say a digital version of the print. So what people were seeing on screen is the two-page view of the print book. So students were using the print books, teachers were using on the wide interactive blackboards the digital version, and it would be easier to manage from going from page to page. So that was the first, could say, requirements. The second most important requirements they had in mind was, I want to create my print and digital at the same time. I don't want to pay for you to create my print, and then later on you come back to me and say that's going to cost me that much to convert it to digital. So then we created, based on InDesign, additional plugins so we can create the print, add all the multimedia components on InDesign, and then export the digital format, which is HTML5 based, that will be compliant to the final reader. So at the end of the day, what the publisher has now, it's an end-to-end publishing platform in which we create the books for print as well as digital using InDesign. We integrate all the interactivity, all the multimedia components using InDesign. We export the PDF, obviously, that goes for print, as well as the digital version of the book in HTML5 format. that is then read into the reader itself. On that reader, it's obviously does exist on PC, Mac, as well as on tablet. So now there are schools in France who are using tablet instead of the school books to do the same lecture. And all that books is fully interactive with quizzes, with interactive maps that has been created up front in Flash before that we converted very recently to HTML5, so you can become tablet compliant and agnostic to any provider, like compliant to Android, Apple, and Windows 8, obviously. So the benefit was clearly on the publisher side to have one single workflow to create print and digital components very rapidly, more efficiently, based on open standards, and create a new product to be used in class by teachers. And the beauty of the tool, that was an additional requirements we built on the top. It's thanks to the digital. Now we're talking about mashup content. Even though we still have the rendering of a 2-page book, the content is being structured in a granular way, meaning that if you click, for instance, in one chapter, or if you click on the map, you will have a pop-up showing up with the map and the contextual text related to the map. And the map could be interactive, you could add a video to it. So then the teacher could create his own pathway, educational pathway, by dragging the different document units into a kind of slideshow, as you do in PowerPoint, and prepare his lecture in advance. So he will say, I will take this map from page 3, this content from page 4, this exercise at the end of the book, and this exercise from the supplement of the book, and he will create his own pathway to teach in class. So the day after, he comes to class, start playing his scenario, teach to the students. Students can follow either on the book or on the tablet today, and at the end of the exercise, at the end of the day, can send the exercise directly to the students. So this is a real case on how to create content upfront, based on open standards, compliant to all platforms, then rely on a digital workflow for creating and assembling that content from print and digital products, as well as distributing it directly to the end user, which are the teachers and the students. And that platform is today used by quite a few of French publishers, as well as in Italy and as well as in Brazil. So those are the key points I wanted to show after making the scenario. So that was for the presentation. So thank you very much for your attention. The next step, what's next, is going to be a last presentation this afternoon at 3 at the same place, done by Mark Wikowski. And you can see the topic of that presentation. And it will be more a US-centric based presentation, Mark being from JOUVE North America. Thank you very much again. And if you have any question,